Hey everyone, I'm sure you've seen the videos going around Instagram. Kyle Singler,
Yeah.
definitely been quite the buzz online. And I wanted to bring you in because if anyone remembers,
Oh, yeah.
Singler is someone like you who really watched him come up, at Duke and then into the NBA.
Yeah. I mean, back in college, he was on fire. That Final Four Most Outstanding Player award in 2010, and then second team All-American in 2011.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, he was set up for, what looked like an incredible career. And now to see him in these videos,
Just jarring. It's a stark contrast.
it really is. And even the setting of the videos, like to see him in that room, it looks like
It's like almost bare.
almost like unfurnished, and then he's shirtless.
Yeah.
It just adds this other level of,
Like unease
it really does.
to what he's saying in the videos.
Exactly. And when you listen to the message, he's talking about, feeling mistreated, abused, and he even says, he fears for his life.
Yeah, you really wonder what's been happening, what's led to this point.
Yeah, what's been going on behind the scenes? And I think you see that reflected in some of the responses from former teammates, too. Guys like Kevin Love,
Yeah.
who grew up with Singler in Oregon. He talked about the positive influence that Singler had on his life.
It really is complex, because you hear that and you see that these people that knew him and were close to him and really speak highly of him. And then you see these videos where it just seems like,
Like something's really off.
yeah, like he's in distress and he's isolated and
He's struggling.
yeah.
And we know that the transition out of pro sports can be really difficult for a lot of athletes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a structured, competitive environment. And then when you leave that to go to something that's
Much less defined.
right.
There's a lot of pressure, there's a shift in identity, and, it's understandable that a lot of athletes would struggle with that kind of transition mentally and emotionally.
And you think about, for some athletes, their whole identity is wrapped up in
Right.
Being an athlete.
Right. Their sport is who they are.
Yeah. And then when that's gone, it can create this feeling of loss and just being lost almost.
Absolutely. And, you're not surrounded by your teammates, by your coaches, by these fans who are constantly validating you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not getting that external validation.
Exactly. And then, you may be facing financial uncertainty, struggling to find a new career, a new path. What are you going to do with your life now?
It's interesting you say that because it's not just about finding a job.
Right.
It's finding that new way to define yourself.
Right. Purpose.
Yeah, like what is your purpose now? And we saw, with Singler, he tried to continue playing after he left the NBA.
Yeah, he went to Spain.
Right. He played for CB Canarias in 2019. So he, tried to keep that going, but then that stopped too.
So then what?
Yeah, so then where do you go? When that thing that has defined you for so long is suddenly not a part of your life.
It really makes you think about how we as a society support our athletes. We put them up on this pedestal. We celebrate their achievements. We celebrate their physical prowess, but we don't really
Equip them.
with the tools and the support that they need
Yeah.
to, transition out of that life and into something else.
Yeah, it's like we expect them to just flip a switch and be fine.
Right? Just go be a normal person now.
But it's just not that simple.
And, that's where those support systems are so important. Family, friends, mentors, mental health professionals.
Yeah, having that network to help you through these really difficult transitions. And in Singler's case, looking at these
It
videos,
really makes you wonder
if,
if those support systems were in place for him.
right, were those things there for him to lean on when he needed them? And that's a good question for anyone who's going through something similar.
Absolutely.
Like, do you have those people in your life, those resources available to help you through those times?
Because it can be such a lonely and isolating experience, especially if you're used to having that team environment, that camaraderie.
And it's not just, for athletes, it's anyone, really.
Right.
It's anyone who's going through a big life change and might be struggling to cope.
Absolutely. We all need those support systems in place.
Yeah, and I think that's something we really need to be talking more about. How do we create a culture where it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to ask for help?
I think it's about recognizing those vulnerabilities and normalizing them.
Exactly. It's about breaking down that stigma.
Especially in the sports world where, there's this emphasis on strength and resilience.
Right, where asking for help might be seen as a weakness.
Exactly. And we need to challenge that perception. We need to create an environment where athletes feel comfortable talking about their struggles, seeking support without the fear of judgment or, repercussions.
So that's a good place to wrap up for today. But when we come back, we'll dive deeper into some of those challenges that athletes face during and after their careers, and discuss some specific strategies for building a stronger support system.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. We'll see you then.
See that? It's almost like there's this expectation for athletes that they're invincible, that they can just tough it out.
Right. Push through anything.
Yeah, and they're just human.
They are.
They're dealing with the same emotions, the same challenges that anyone else is.
And on top of that, you add in all the pressures that come with being a professional athlete.
Oh, absolutely.
The constant scrutiny, the expectations, the fear of getting injured.
The fear of decline.
Yeah, like you're not going to be at the top of your game forever. And then, you layer in the financial stuff, the uncertainty of what you're going to do next.
Yeah. Where do you go from here? What's next for me?
It's no wonder that a lot of athletes struggle with all of that.
And you have to think about it. A lot of these athletes have dedicated their entire lives to their sport.
Yeah, it's all they've ever known.
They missed out on typical adolescent experiences and social development because they were so focused on training and competing.
It's like they've been living in this bubble.
Yes.
And when that bubble bursts, they're kind of thrust into this world that they don't really know how to navigate.
Right, and they might not be equipped to handle it. It can be a real shock to the system.
Especially if they haven't really developed a sense of self outside of their sport.
Exactly. And then you think about the psychological impact too. Athletes are conditioned to strive for excellence, to push their limits, to constantly seek improvement.
To be the best.
Right, to be the best, and that's great for competition. But when you transition out of that environment...
And where the goalposts are constantly changing.
Right, it's hard to adjust, and it can lead to feelings of inadequacy, restlessness, even emptiness.
And it makes me think about what Singler said in his video.
Yeah.
About, his strength and purpose not being valued or treated properly.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if maybe that's part of what he's struggling with. That disconnect between who he was as a basketball player and who he is now.
Absolutely. We all need to feel valued. We need to have a sense of purpose. And when those needs aren't met, it can lead to all sorts of challenges.
And, to feel like the things that you were good at, that you were known for, are no longer relevant.
Right, or appreciated.
Yeah, and to be in that position where, you've achieved so much, but it doesn't feel like it matters anymore.
That can be so isolating, especially if you don't have the support to process those feelings and find a new path forward.
When you hear Singler talk about feeling mistreated and abused,
it's heartbreaking.
It is. And you can't help but wonder if, that sense of isolation and lack of support played a role in what led him to this point.
It's definitely a possibility, and it really highlights how important mental health professionals can be in these situations.
To help athletes navigate those emotions and transitions.
Exactly. They provide a safe space to process those feelings of loss, confusion, anxiety, and, help them develop coping mechanisms and strategies for building a new life.
So what would that look like in practice? Like, how can we actually create a more supportive environment for athletes?
Well, for starters, we have to break down the stigma surrounding mental health in the sports world.
So it's okay to not be okay.
Exactly. Athletes need to know that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
And that they're not going to be penalized for taking care of their mental well-being.
Right. It's not going to hurt their career.
And that has to start from the top.
Absolutely.
The coaches, the managers, the league officials. Everyone needs to be on board with creating a culture where mental health is a priority.
Exactly. Where athletes feel comfortable talking about their struggles and they know they'll be supported.
Yeah. And it's not just, the people within the sports world.
Right.
It's the fans. It's the media.
Absolutely.
We all contribute to the culture that these athletes operate in.
We put a lot of pressure on them.
We too.
To perform, to win, to be perfect.
And we scrutinize everything they do.
And we need to be more mindful of that. We need to remember that these are human beings with their own lives and their own challenges.
They're more than just entertainers.
Exactly. They're people with hopes, dreams, vulnerabilities, and struggles just like everyone else.
And when those struggles become too much,
we need to make sure that they have access to the resources that they need.
Therapy, counseling, support groups.
It shouldn't matter what level they're at or what their status is. They should have access to those resources.
It's interesting because we often hear stories of athletes who hit rock bottom after their careers are over.
Yeah, it's a common narrative.
But what if we started thinking about that transition out of sports as something that starts before they retire?
That's a great point.
Like, what if we started preparing them for that next chapter while they're still playing?
Help them develop a sense of self outside of their sport.
Yeah, encourage them to explore other interests and passions.
Build relationships and support networks that will last beyond their playing days.
Help them develop some financial literacy, some career planning skills.
Life skills in general.
Right, things that maybe they didn't learn while they were in that structured environment of pro sports.
Exactly. Prepare them for the real world.
And help them understand that their worth isn't tied to their athletic achievements.
Right, that they're valuable human beings regardless of what they do on the field or the court.
We're definitely seeing more conversation about mental health these days.
Yeah, for sure.
But it still feels like the sports world is kind of lagging behind a bit.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of work to do in that area.
So looking at, Singler's situation, what can we learn from this to maybe prevent others from going through something similar?
Well, I think it's a reminder that these challenges can affect anyone.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter your background, your achievements, your status.
Right, anyone can struggle with mental health.
Exactly, and it really highlights the importance of creating that culture of support and open communication.
Yeah, and not just in sports, but in all aspects of life.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of the game, to idolize these athletes and forget that they're human.
Right, they're just like us dealing with the same ups and downs.
And we see the highlight reels, the victories, the endorsements, but we don't see what's happening behind closed doors.
Right, all the pressure, the anxiety, the struggles that they might be facing.
And I think, Sigler's case really highlights that.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, he seemed to have it all.
Right, the talent, the success, the recognition.
But clearly something wasn't right.
And it's a reminder that we never really know what someone else is going through.
Yeah, you can't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly. You might see the smiles, the trophies, the social media posts, but you don't see the private battles or the internal struggles.
And that's what makes his decision to share his message on Instagram so impactful.
It really does.
It's like he was using that platform to cry out for help, to let people know that he was hurting.
Yeah, he needed to be heard. He needed to be acknowledged.
And it makes you wonder how many others are out there suffering in silence.
Afraid to speak up.
Worried about what people will think or what the repercussions might be.
And that's why it's so important to create those spaces where vulnerability is welcomed, where seeking help is seen as a strength.
So if we kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture, what are some things that we can do to create that more supportive environment for athletes?
Well, we've talked about a few things already, as, destigmatizing mental health conversations, providing access to resources, fostering that culture of empathy and understanding.
Right, and making sure that athletes know that it's okay to not be okay.
Exactly, but I think we also need to think about how we prepare athletes for life after sports.
So not just addressing the challenges as they come up, but actually giving them the tools and the skills to build a fulfilling life beyond their sport.
Exactly. It's about helping them develop that sense of purpose and identity that extends beyond the playing field.
So, supporting their transition into new careers.
Right.
Providing opportunities for personal and professional growth.
And fostering that sense of community and belonging that can really sustain them when the cheers fade away.
So really it's about viewing athletes as more than just performers.
Exactly.
And recognizing that they have so much potential to contribute to society in all sorts of ways.
Absolutely. Their athletic journey is just one chapter in their lives.
Yeah, it's not the whole story.
And they have so much more to offer, so much to give back.
Well, I think this has been a really insightful deep dive.
Yeah, me too.
It's obviously heartbreaking to see what Singler's going through,
It is.
but his story really is a powerful call to action.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more supportive and compassionate world.
A world where mental health is valued and vulnerability is met with understanding, not judgment.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to leave it for today.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground, and hopefully this has given everyone some food for thought.
And maybe spark some ideas about how we can all be a part of the solution.
Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And to everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.